Hi, I'm David Lipson. Coming up on AM, the National Guard mobilised in LA to try to stop looters in fire-ravaged neighbourhoods, and autistic Australians 6 times more likely to be unemployed. Can a new national strategy turn it around?
Yes, hello, welcome to the ABC Canberra Breakfast Show. You are with Ross Solly. Look, a lot of you having your say this morning about we just had Jo Clay in the studio talking about her frustrations that she's not been able to get many answers about what's been planned out at Thoroughbred Park. And the Greens still maintaining their position that the racing industry is we no longer need the racing industry here in the ACT, and it should be shunted aside and replaced by a proper housing development, which includes affordable housing, a school, other community facilities. A lot of you having your say on this. As I mentioned, we put a call in to the racing industry and they were not available to chat with us. But I did get a fairly detailed text come in, which I think outlines a lot of what the racing industry has said in their submission. This text says, Thoroughbred Park has only 25 race days a year and over 120 other events during the year, with independent reports showing an $80 million return to the Canberra economy. It is more than just a horse racing area, and the Canberra Racing Club is working with the ACT government on a $2 billion master plan, which would see 3,200 homes as well as restaurants, cafes and shops on 17 hectares of land to sit alongside racing facilities and complement Epic to ensure an important events precinct remains for the community. The land is leased by the club until 2100, and sadly, Jo Clay just wants taxpayers to pick up the tab for the precinct development when the club is already well advanced on a development with housing and other services that will benefit the community. That is a view from a texter, fairly close to the race industry's proposal, I think, judging by their level of knowledge here. If you'd like to have your say on this, 1300 681 666, or you can send me a text on 0467 922 666. Just before we go to Dr. Marisa Paterson, just an update on that traffic incident. Sadly, it has involved an e-scooter rider. They've been treated for serious injuries at the intersection of London Circuit and Northbourne Avenue after being hit by a car. Northbourne Avenue is slow heading south because of the accident, so just be aware of that. Northbourne Avenue, which to my mind is a place that you should avoid most days anyway if you're trying to commute places, but today particularly if you're heading south, it is very, very slow because of that accident involving a car and a e-scooter rider. All lanes are now open, but the traffic has banked up quite a bit, so just be aware of that. 22 minutes to 8. Dr. Marisa Paterson has been waiting patiently to talk to us about the government's proposal regarding Thoroughbred Park. Dr. Paterson, thank you so much for your patience. I appreciate it. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Ross.
So you listened in to Jo Clay and her views and her frustrations here. First of all, just one of the things, the question that she asked, which she says she hasn't been able to get an answer to, will the proposed development that Canberra Thoroughbred Park has put forward, will it include affordable housing or not?
So, Ross, I am speaking to you today as the Minister for Gaming Reform. So that's, I guess, my perspective is a bit broader than just Thoroughbred Park and what the proposal is there. What I do know is that basically Canberra Racing Club is looking to redevelop their site, and so the government recognised that and is supportive of that, with the particular discussion around, you know, the decline in the racing industry and the fact that this is such a large swathe of land in the north of Canberra that the government set up a steering committee to work with the club around their development plans, and ultimately it's up to the Canberra Racing Club to put in a territory plan variation and a development application, which will then allow the community to have its feedback on its plans.
Yeah, well, Jo Clay's saying that she's had to go through FOI to get a lot of information at this stage. Do you feel, and as the gaming minister, obviously this is public money going into this, that there is enough information out there and enough opportunity for the community to have their say? Because Jo Glace has been very secretive so far.
Well, I disagree with that perception. I think the Canberra Racing Club's been very upfront with their plans to redevelop their site, and it's just that there hasn't been a development application submitted at this point. I do think, though, this broader discussion of clubs redeveloping their site, this is what we want to see. So this is what, Labor went to the election with commitments to encourage both the Canberra Racing Club and also other clubs in our local community to redevelop. And, this is about industry transition and diversification. The Canberra Racing Club is a really good example of a club that has sought to diversify its offering. It has, as one of your texters said, they have a vast range of events out at the club. They've got their Festival of Speed, which I think is in a couple of weeks' time. They did their economic impact assessment, which saw about $80 million contributed in 2022-23 to the Canberra community. So I think while the Greens might not like horse racing, and it would be nice if they're more explicit about their agenda in that space, I do think this is a broader discussion around supporting clubs to diversify, and it's recognising that their current economic models are not sustainable. And that's for the Canberra Racing Club. It's also for our community clubs. And so this is going to come up again and again and again when our local clubs are seeking to transition and diversify. And so the Greens just want to stop that, and they want, they're obstructing that. I see. This is what I view it as.
Do you think, Marisa Paterson, that Canberra needs a thriving racing industry?
Well, I think the issue is that it's not necessarily a thriving industry.
No, it's not. It doesn't seem to be.
So this is why the government is working with the racing club to diversify, and this is the same with poker machines.
But do you believe? And I'll get onto the poker machines in just a moment. But do you believe that if you're saying the Greens, and it certainly seems to be the indication that the Greens would like to shut the industry down altogether, do you think that we need a racing industry in the ACT?
Well, I don't think it's all or nothing. And with all the clubs, with the Canberra Racing Club, these are clubs with a lot of community history. They have, broad social and economic impact. And, it's not for me to decide that is the end of that industry. I think what we want is the best outcomes
as the gaming minister, sorry to interrupt, Dr. Paterson, but as the gaming minister, you must have a view on whether you think that it's, obviously it seems there's a lot of public money goes towards the racing industry at the moment. There's a lot of figures out there on how much money comes back into the community through the facilities out there at the race course. But as the gaming minister, you must have a view on whether we need a race course, whether we need a racing industry here in the ACT.
Well, my perspective comes from the impact of gambling harm. So looking at the 2019 Gambling Impact Survey, you see that sports betting is one of the most harmful forms of betting in Canberra. Then poker machines and horse racing is down the list in terms of the impact and the harm that is caused. And so I guess, I'm focused on addressing the gambling harm, and that's what I do hope to do through our election commitments and through the position as Minister for Gambling Reform.
So you wouldn't shed too many tears if the racing industry was forced to fold and maybe that area out there was turned into other purposes?
I just think we've just got to have more mature discussions around this. Is about transitions of industry. This is about diversification, and it's exactly the same as the community clubs. And it's not enough to just say overnight we're going to shut down the industry. I think it's about transitioning the industry for good economic and social outcomes for the Canberra community. If there's a lot of jobs involved in these industries, and if you shut that down overnight, where are all these jobs going to come from? And I think what we want to see and what we want to do is support these clubs to think outside the box, to think about ways that they can, diversify diversify and, stimulate the economy and become more viable. And that's what I think, that's what Labor is focused on. That's what a lot of our election commitments spoke to. And, I think that is a transition. And so, I think the Canberra Racing Club is doing exactly what the ACT government has asked of them, to look outside the box, to look at what they can be doing to be more economically viable in the future.
Yeah, I need to put this out there that and people would know this, I grew up in a racing family and I know the number of people who are employed in the industry and what it provides and that sort of stuff. But I'm not saying one way or another here. It's not for me to say what's best for the community. Just circling back to how this discussion started, I know it's not your area, housing, but do you think it would make sense that there would be some affordable housing as part of that development, Marisa Paterson?
Well, again, it'll be the Canberra Racing Club's proposal that they put forward, and as you said, I'm not actually the appropriate minister for that, but I do think that their proposal when they do seek the territory plan variation, good to see as diverse as possible and meeting community needs, and we do know that we are needing more homes in the ACT, which is why Labor went to the election with a proposal for 30,000 new homes, and part of that includes the development at the Canberra Racing Club.
It is a discussion I'm sure we'll have many more times this year. We'll also talk about gambling reform generally and the pokies as well, because I'm sure that will be a hot button topic this year as well. But I appreciate your time this morning, Dr. Paterson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ross.
That's Dr. Marisa Paterson, who is the government's gaming minister. As she's mentioned, she's not the housing minister, but she certainly has views on this sort of stuff. A lot of texts coming in on this. Jill says, "Hi Ross, for the first time in forever I went to Thoroughbred Park on a Friday in September last year. The one thing that caught my eye was the sheer number of young men there in the middle of the afternoon, many wearing tradie vests. It was depressing to see how the gambling industry has captured this demographic," says Jill. Annoying says, regarding Thoroughbred Park, there's open space just to the north, the grasslands, but the Greens commissioned option master plan could have better wildlife corridors and orientation of the blocks northeast, not northwest. Somebody else says there's a bigger racing industry in Wagga than there is in Canberra. Somebody else says the minister for propping up the gambling industry, shameful stuff. This texter says, blah, 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 the same argument that clubs contribute to the community. The community also gives money to clubs, mostly by people desperate for money. Marisa has been a hypocrite about gambling harm, says this texter. Craig Shannon is the Chief Executive Officer of ClubsACT and has joined us. Craig Shannon, good to chat with you and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Ross. I've got a bit of COVID, so excuse me.
Oh, sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that. What a lovely way to welcome in 2025. Craig Shannon, you've been listening to Joe Clay. You've been listening to Marisa Paterson. I know you've got strong thoughts on all of this.
Well, completely backing in the position of Thoroughbred Park here, and you read out some detail earlier about the proposals that they've got on the table for that precinct redevelopment. And the Minister is correct. The club industry in Canberra is very keen to diversify and expand into new opportunities for the Canberra community's benefit. It's a not-for-profit sector, and we can't get rid of every activity in this town that certain individuals may not like or may not enjoy. There's 120 other activities outside of horse racing going on at that venue space. We don't have a lot of venue spaces in Canberra. And the Festival of Speed coming up on the Australia Day weekend is going to be a huge event out there for a lot of people, many of whom will have no interest in horse racing. But it is sustainable as an event because of those people that do have an interest in horse racing.
Yeah, a lot of people, and Joe Clay quoting these figures, Craig Shannon, about how much public money goes into the racing industry. She quoted the fact that more money goes towards racing than goes towards the Brumbies, the Raiders, Canberra United, all those sports clubs combined. When you put it like that, do you see why it could be a hard argument to sustain?
Government and community put a lot of money into a variety of different sports because they have multiplier economic value to the ACT community. And the independent reports that have substantiated that Thoroughbred Park produces $80 million worth of benefit back into the Australian ACT economy is an important factor that's got to be kept on the table here. If people want to gamble, well, just because you get with a thoroughbred park, it's only going to drive other people to go into online wagering, maybe go to other locations around the ACT where they can do it. It's just going to take an activity out of Canberra that actually does have a revenue benefit for the ACT economy, and it's a social cohesion thing for a lot of people in this town who enjoy that kind of activity. And other activities like, as I say, the Festival of Speed and GammaCon and a range of other activities that take place out at that venue.
Craig Shannon, I don't know how familiar you are with the proposal as it stands at the moment, but do you know whether it includes affordable housing?
My understanding, and I can't speak definitively on this because I don't know that stage of the process has been completed, but I do understand that has been considered as part of the development proposal. And there's a very strong commitment to expanding the housing stock across the ACT by our members in the club sector, and that's one of the diversification agendas that we're working with the ACT government on.
And just on, you said you supported what Marisa Paterson said, but she was also saying that she's very concerned about the effects of gambling and that, and without saying it directly, it seems like she's not a big supporter. And I don't want to verbal her here, but she was suggesting that the racing industry does have some problems in terms of the gambling issues. What are your thoughts on that?
The entire club industry, including Thoroughbred Park, are always very concerned about gambling harm issues, and they're very responsible players in this space. At the end of the day, just because you shove things out of the ACT or under the carpet doesn't mean that you get rid of gambling harm. You either address it full on with an active participation by the industry involved in those areas, or you actually push it off to somebody else to have to deal with. And we've got a very good community in the ACT that works very strongly in this area with the government.
Craig Shannon, appreciate your input this morning. Thank you very much. Good luck with the COVID.
Thanks, Ross. Good on you. Thanks, mate.
Bye-bye. Craig Shannon, who's the Chief Executive Officer of ClubsACT. It is 9 minutes to 8. A lot of